Joining us now is Frank Zaccanelli.
Frank Zaccanelli.
Frank Zaccanelli.
Frank Zaccanelli.
Let's welcome Frank Zaccanelli.
Live from the Real News Studios in Dallas, Texas, welcome to the To Be Frank Show. Your host, Frank Zaccanelli, has been in the world of domestic and international business and professional sports for 40 years. And as a former minority owner, president, and general manager of the Dallas Mavericks, he's been asked to comment on current events in the national news for most of his professional career. But what he and many others are really looking for is a place to find just the facts. Welcome to the To Be Frank Show.
Hello, live from Dallas, Texas, the holiday version of the To Be Frank Show. Happy Labor Day to everyone. You know, when I looked on the calendar a few weeks ago and I said, well, we're going to do a Labor Day show. And if your Labor Day is anything like my Labor Day, it's not a Labor Day because it's not a holiday because of this coronavirus. It is a holiday, but at the same time, everybody's having to really social distance and watch, or most people. Now, we're going to get the statistics about those in our population that haven't done the right thing over the weekend. And those numbers, normally show up about 2 weeks later. So as a show, we're going to keep an eye on it. But, Labor Day is a wonderful holiday. It really kind of marks, in some places, the end of the summer. In Texas here, there's no end to the damn summer. It doesn't seem like it. But, in the Northeast and in the Midwest, it really marks the end of the summer season. And I really take a look at this, from a different perspective, as everyone in their lives has had to really take a look at their lives and how the coronavirus and the pandemic has really affected them. Well, clearly, it's affected everybody as it relates to the 4th of July, Labor Day. Let's hope it doesn't affect our Thanksgivings and our Christmases. That would be a real shame. But again, this is something that is not going away. This is something that, again, is in the midst of now our kids going back to school. We don't have a segment on that, but I can tell you we're going to have a lot of segments on it in upcoming shows because the statistics that are coming out as it relates to the schools are not that promising. You see teachers now that are stepping away. You're seeing a problem with the distance learning. And we called that, months and months ago, that the whole distance learning, with all the technology has not really been set up in a way that it's seamless now. And it can really help the students where they don't have to be in the classroom and help the parents. But it's really not being set up that way in a lot of places. You're reading and hearing a lot about deficiencies in their ability to be able to distance learn. And that's going to be the answer to this until we get through this. And again, what are the answers? Well, clearly, we're going to have to find a vaccine. We're going to have to vaccinate people. And I mentioned on the last show, when it comes to the vaccines, there's got to be a situation out there where everybody's got to understand that, like the testing, it's not going to be perfect when the vaccine first comes out. There won't be enough doses. Who knows, how it's going to be administered. We have to hope that our government has made sure that it's safe. So there's a whole lot of things that are brewing here. So we're going to keep an eye on all that. Like I said, we don't have a segment today on the schools, but next week or Thursday and then the following Monday, we're going to have segments that are going to talk a little bit about exactly where things stand state by state, region by region, and for the overall country. So, like I said, this is unlike any other Labor Day we've ever had. I hope that everyone who views the show will stay safe. There are a lot of reports that some people are not doing that, and we'll get the statistics on that probably 2 weeks from now. Okay. So our first segment is about a segment that I had on the last show where I talked about the stock market is not an indicator of the overall U.S. economy. Well, guess what happens? The stock market now has gotten murdered the last 2 days, almost prophetically like I called it, but I didn't want to call it. Okay, I said on the show that, if I had nothing better to do, I would probably short the market. Well, if you take a look at the statistics, the Dow and the NASDAQ, which are the two major trading platforms, are down over 1,000 points each from my last show. And I didn't take any great, accolades about the fact that I get off this show and I go down and I turn my TV on and the market's getting murdered, okay? And it got hit, not murdered, but it got hit the following day on Friday. But Thursday was a terrible day. And I think what's happening is that people are really paying attention now to some of the ancillary things that we brought up on this show, that there are still millions and millions and millions of people displaced and out of work. Small businesses are really getting hammered. And again, when I say these things and I make these predictions, if you will, I hate like anything to have to come on the show and say, well, this actually happened. There was an old commercial back in the day, when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. I don't want to go that far, but when the To Be Frank show talks, you got to listen. Roll the tape. The stock market is not an indicator of the United States situation on the economy. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, here's my point. If you take a look at the NASDAQ, if you don't follow the stock market much, I'll try to explain it as simply as I can. You've got two different vehicles in which stocks are traded predominantly in the United States. You have the Dow Jones Industrial and you have the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ has got more tech companies and the Dow Jones has companies like Exxon, IBM, all the traditional companies. So for those of you that don't pay attention to that, but I think that everybody pays somewhat attention to it because now everybody's got a 401k. And if you go look at your 401k, you're going to be really happy this afternoon because the NASDAQ is at a record level and the Dow Jones Industrial is approaching another record level. But here's my problem. Take a look at the fundamentals. So the fundamentals were really challenged the last two trading days by the traders. And again, I hate to be right on these things. I think that, I had to really think about this segment. Is this coming off like, now I'm a stock show? I'm not. I've done my share of investing through the years. But I just don't think that the stock market, up, down, or around, is a indicator of some of the things going on in the U.S. economy. As I mentioned, there's a lot of politics that are involved here as well. I mean, you're just not going to be able to escape it. 50 some odd days from the election, and our last segment is going to be the most serious segment maybe that I've ever done on this show about all the news about Donald Trump and the military and all of that. And we're going to hit it from all sides. And I'm going to give a lot of editorial about what I think needs to happen and what doesn't need to happen. But when you take a look at the economy and the stock market, the Democrats want to downplay it. They want to say, Trump did this and Trump did that. No, nobody could have, predicted a coronavirus. Nobody could have done that. I mean, the economy was on fire in February. And all of a sudden, the Chinese virus hits. And I'm sorry, on this show, we call it the Chinese virus. For people that are just tuning in, this is not a xenophobic statement against the Chinese people. It has everything to do with the Chinese government, how they operate, the secrecy in which they work, okay? And it's not a political statement. I'm not agreeing with the Republicans. It's how I feel on this show. This is the Chinese virus. That's where it started. And so the long and short of it is that we've all got to start to handle our own situations in our own way. But in the election year, okay, in the election year, everything is politicized. And the Democrats would like to be able to use the drop in the economy and say it was Trump's fault. Now, the argument that can be made, and I've made it here on this show, is that Donald didn't really take this coronavirus scenario as seriously as he should have taken it, especially in the early months. Okay, that's a problem. But he did shut down the economy. The economy then went into this massive unemployment scenario that it's now trying to come out of. And you got the Democrats and Biden and everybody yelling and screaming about, well, you know, this economy's no good, it's this and that. No one could have predicted the coronavirus. On the other side, Trump's biggest problem in this whole equation is he downplayed the virus. And he downplayed it at a level that was really terrible, you know. And then he got governors like this guy down in Florida, you know, this Ron DeSantis, who I'm not a big fan of. But he got him to open up. He got the Texas governor, who I like, to open up. The Arizona governor to open up, all prematurely. A lot of pressure was coming. We got to get this economy back. Well, there was a way to do it and a way not to do it. And I think, you know, Donald didn't do it the right way. So now you get back to, you know, they point up on the Republican side the stock market. Well, it's doing much better, and it's almost back to its original levels. Now, this was last week before it got hit again. But I think you're going to see an up and down and around scenario as it relates to the markets, because no one is certain of exactly what's going to happen. I understand running a political campaign. On one side, you're going to say one thing. On the other side, you're going to say another thing. But I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. And where I see the truth is the fact that no one really knows. So that's the other side of this. Now, we have a second piece to the clip, and then and this is the clip from Thursday's show, and I'll respond to that clip. Again, I don't want to gloat here, but we called it on the 2B Frank show. Roll the tape. So when we look at the stock market, okay, and we analyze it, don't use that as an indication, even though across the board everybody's happy because their 401k is much better. God bless you. I'm happy for you. But there are still an enormous amount of people that are being affected by this, and I believe that sooner or later that's going to catch up to the growth in the country, and it's going to catch up to the growth of the GNP, because there are a lot of people that are out of work. When the Frank show speaks, people listen. That's all I can say. You know, call it luck, call it whatever you want, but it's not luck. I pay attention to these kind of things. Now, don't go out and buy or sell stock on my recommendations, please. Huge disclaimer. We're not giving you stock tips. This is more about the economy and what reflection the stock market has on the economy. So I had to take a minute to gloat. I'm sorry. All right. Here is a really funny story. This one's nutty, okay? In Stroud, Stroud, England, there was a story that came out over the weekend that a hair salon owner decided that she was going to run an ad. And I'm going to read a little bit of this, but she was going to run an ad because she wanted to hire a happy, vibrant hair salon technician to come in. She had an opening, and she wanted to use that in the ad, that she wanted someone who was happy and vibrant. Okay. The hair salon was called by some jerk in England. I don't know what, like government agency, state agency, regional agency, city agency in Stroud, which is in the center of the country, that the ad for the happy stylist was discriminatory. And they couldn't actually run the ad because it was discriminatory against unhappy people. Okay. This is where we're going here now. And I was so happy when I saw the story that this wasn't in like Portland or this wasn't in Omaha. You know, let the Brits deal with this, I guess. But she literally had to pull the ad because it was discriminatory against unhappy people. Wanting a happy stylist is discriminatory against you hiring an unhappy person. Now, I'm all for, there are people sometimes in life that aren't happy and they have good reason. So at this show, we're not going to get on those that are going through hard times, they're shut in. Please don't, mix up what I'm really trying to say here. But as it relates to a job ad, and the woman's like, I just wanted to hire somebody that was going to be happy, that would be around here. I'd like being around, and the customers would like being around. No, Stroud, England, whatever bureaucrat, and you got to think about bureaucracy over there. I mean, these people lead the league in bureaucratic behavior, okay? But some agency of England said, no, can't run that ad, discriminatory against unhappy people. That's quite a story. It's a world gone nuts, right? It's a world gone nuts. This is the world we live in. All right. Segment 3 is a segment that I know a little bit about. Actually, it's a segment I know a lot about. ESPN's Stephen A. Smith, who is now ESPN's #1 personality. And to be honest with you, you know what? I like listening to him, but you have to take Stephen A. Smith in small doses, because he goes on and he goes on and he goes on. And the more his popularity has risen, and it's risen to the #1, commentator on all of ESPN's networks, and he covers the NBA pretty significantly. He covers the NFL, doesn't cover much on hockey, but he's a guy that is not afraid to make statements. He's a guy that ultimately has whatever wherewithal he needs inside that network. They allow him to do just about anything, okay? And one of the things that you learn as you start to do this show and you're getting into the media side like I am, is people in the cable networks are pretty much told what they can and they cannot do. For Stephen A. Smith, it doesn't appear on any side that he has boundaries. So let me tell you what the story's all about. And the reason I know a little bit about this story. The story's about a former player called Steve Nash, who, oh, by the way, in working with Don and Donnie Nelson, we traded for during my days at the Dallas Mavericks, and we got him from the Phoenix Suns at the same time that we drafted Dirk Nowitzki. And I suggested to anyone who wanted to listen that that was the ultimate turning point in the franchise, from the late 80s, early 90s, and the meltdown that occurred with the Mavericks. When we came in 1996, we pretty much just dismantled the team and started over. Like any insolvent business, we just took it apart and rebuilt it. And so Don Nelson and Donnie Nelson deserve the majority of the credit, but clearly I was involved, and I became, very well acquainted and actually friends with Steve Nash, as I did with Dirk. But Steve Nash is one of the most quality guys in the history of the NBA. Well, he has now been hired as the head coach to the Brooklyn Nets, and he was hired about a week ago. And he does not have any prior coaching experience. Now, you're going to find out that that's not been a determination point for basketball teams to hire first-time coaches. And we're going to go into that in a lot of detail. But Steve Nash is as quality a guy as you could ever have. And the Brooklyn Nets decided to make him their next head coach. Well, Stephen A. Smith had a gigantic problem with this, and he went on a rant on ESPN that I thought was really not very smart. I'm going to play the clip, and it's about a 3-minute clip, and then I'll give you some comments and we'll give you some detail on this. Roll the tape.
Do you have any more thoughts on the subject? Well, first of all, one of the things that I'm glad that this subject has been broached again. Just so you know, I spoke to Sean Marks, the GM for the Brooklyn Nets this morning, because I wanted to make sure he understood exactly where I am coming from. And I mentioned white privilege yesterday. I have a message to those who feel that I was wrong, that I need to apologize, that, I don't know what I'm talking about, et cetera, et cetera. I don't give a damn what y'all feel. Y'all can all kick rocks. I don't give a damn. I'm not budging from my position 1 inch. I called it white privilege yesterday. I'm calling it today. I'm going to call it white privilege a month from now, a year from now, 5 years from now. And you know why Stephen A. Smith, this brother, sitting on this platform can do that? Because I was doing it 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I was doing this when Kevin Durant was in elementary school. My position has been very, very clear. And for those out there that don't comprehend, that don't understand where I'm coming from, when I'm talking about white privilege, my apologies to Steve Nash because it's not his fault. Good luck. I think he's going to do a great job. I'm happy for him because he's a good dude. Sean Marks, I think, is doing an exceptional job in Brooklyn. I wish him nothing but the best. But when I'm talking about white privilege, I am simply saying this man with no coaching resume whatsoever gets his first job as a coach in the media capital of the world, coaching a championship-ready squad led by one of the greatest players in the history of basketball in Kevin Durant and an absolute showstopper who is a box office attraction in Kyrie Irving, who happened to be the two preeminent voices on that squad who completely okayed bringing him on. Who are the brothers that were interviewed? Even if you don't hire them, can we know who they are? Did you talk to Ty Lue? Did you talk to Mark Jackson, who starred at Bishop Loughlin in high school, which is in Brooklyn, who starred at St. John's as a rookie? Who started at St. John's University and then came to the Knicks as a rookie of the year, who's a Queens native, O'Connell Park. Look it up. Did you talk to him? Did you ask? All right, how about Sam Cassell? How about, listen, Bob McAdoo is a name. I mean, if we want to be fair, the brother's only been an assistant coach on Pat Riley's staff forever, and he's been in the league as an assistant coach forever, and the only interview he's ever gotten was from the Philadelphia 76ers. But Steve Nash, who we didn't even know was interested in coaching. We didn't even know he was interested in coaching until recently. Didn't even have to lobby for the job, and he gets picked as the head coach. My point about white privilege, tell me the black man that would happen for. No resume whatsoever as a coach at all. And you get a job of this magnitude. I'm not.
Okay, as I have mentioned to you before the clip, this man goes on and he goes on and he goes on. There's so much there that I can cover. I mean, first of all, Steve, I'm sorry that you're white. I don't know how to even explain that. To inject race in this is ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. And I'm going to give you some statistics here. But, how many black coaches did they talk to? How many did they interview? All I can say is the NBA is as racially diverse as anything in our country. I mean, if Steve Nash is the choice because of his relationship with the star players, who, by the way, signed off on this. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are the two best players with the Brooklyn Nets. They're both all-star players. And they signed off on this. They basically said, you know what? He'll be great. We like him. He's got the right attitude. I mean, to start to inject race in this, and you actually see a guy that has no fear of anything. Okay, I think he made himself look terribly ridiculous in that clip. And then he made some statements that are completely wrong. And I'm going to cover the major one, which is, and I'll give you a quote. I want to give you a quote. Ladies and gentlemen, this was one of his quotes. There's no way around it. This does not happen for a black man. Let me repeat that now. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no way around it. This does not happen for a black man. This is Stephen A's own words. Well, Stephen A, obviously, you, I don't know, got up on the wrong side of bed. You hit your head in the shower. I'm going to give you some statistics that are going to clean that completely up. Let me give you a list of the coaches that have been hired who are former players who did not have, at the time that they were hired, an inch, 1 day of coaching experience. And let me go down through a list to completely refute everything that Stephen A said on that piece of the subject. First of all, again, injecting race into the hiring of Steve Nash, is this where we've gone now? Is this where ESPN is? Okay, this is really getting ridiculous now. But let me go through a list, and I'm going to mention 9 names. Now, there are 16. 16 coaches have gone from no experience as a player to head coaches in the league. 16. Okay? Stephen A, well, you know, this never happens, and it doesn't happen to a black guy. I don't care what color you are. I mean, on this show, we don't discriminate no matter what. Okay? I'm not going to, start talking about black issues and white issues and all these issues as it relates to hiring of a head coach. But let me go through the names, and let me give you the list. And this ought to literally clear everybody's head on this subject. This is no particular order. Derek Fisher played with the Lakers, played with Kobe. First-time coach, New York Knicks. He's African American. Okay? Derek Fisher. Steve Kerr, who is a white guy that now coaches the Golden State Warriors, had no prior coaching experience. Jason Kidd, who played here in Dallas. I had a lot to do with Jason Kidd. Okay? African American, Brooklyn Nets. African American, Brooklyn Nets. Mark Jackson, who was named in the litany that Stephen A. Smith just went through. Mark Jackson, African American, went to the Golden State Warriors. Vinny Del Negro, white guy, he went to Chicago. These are all coaches now that had zero experience from their playing days in coaching that were named head coaches in the league. Kevin McHale played with Larry Bird in Boston. He went to Minnesota, white guy. Isaiah Thomas, all over the TV, one of the 15, 20 greatest players ever to play. He went to Indiana, African American. Doc Rivers, the current coach of what I think is going to be the NBA champ this year, the Los Angeles Clippers. Doc Rivers went to Orlando, African American guy. What's my point? I hope this settles this out. Somebody needs to have my people send this to Stephen A. Smith, invite him on the show. Now, he'll think he's too big to come on the show, and I'm going to cut him off or I'll do whatever. 16 coaches fall into the Steve Nash category, and guess what? You ready for this one? 9 of them are black. So every argument that this man has made in his rant about injecting white privilege into the middle of this is not substantiated by one iota of factual information. And it upsets me because this is where we are in the country, you know? This is where we are. Steve Nash and the color of his skin never affected him when he played. He was one of the most liked guys in the league, both from African Americans and non-African Americans. Like I mentioned, the NBA is the most diverse operation in the history of the United States. Okay, Steve Nash gets a chance to coach. God bless him. 16 coaches have done it. 9 of them were African American. So when Stephen A. gets on his rant, well, how many brothers did they talk to? Well, I don't know, Stephen, but certainly there's a gigantic precedent for this. And I'm all for, okay, the best coach should be hired. But the fact that African American coaches are coaching in the league, I couldn't be happier. Now, You want to go back to my history? I hired one of them, okay? My first year with the Dallas Mavericks, I hired the assistant coach for the Chicago Bulls on their championship teams under Phil Jackson, Michael Jordan's teams, Jim Clemens. And you know what? He turned out to be one of the greatest guys of all time. Jim didn't last very long with the organization, but it was a joy to be around him. So, Stephen, you know, I've been there. You hadn't been there. So you ought to get your facts straight before you go on one of these rants. All right. And then the fourth segment is probably one of the most disturbing segments that I'm going to have to cover on this show. And I'm going to try to do a job where I balance it out, where this is balanced on both sides. I've got a couple of clips. But last week now, The Atlantic magazine, which is a left-leaning magazine for sure, comes out with a report that anonymous sources have stated that Donald Trump, the President of the United States, when he was in France 2 years ago, was making derogatory comments about the fallen servicemen that were in the cemeteries in France. And actually, that he personally did not want to go to the second cemetery because he called them suckers and losers. Now, for somebody to print this and actually print it with anonymous sources, which is all that has happened here. Fox News got caught up in this, so we're going to cover that. CNN, of course, is caught up in it because they're having a party over this. And again, not sticking up for Donald Trump, because my position is this is a serious matter. But is it another one of these that's made up to try to get rid of Donald Trump? I mean, we've seen so much of this that everyone has got to be leery about what people's motivations are. I said a month ago, I said 2 weeks ago, I said on the last show, if you think it's crazy now, just wait. This is going to get insane. But The Atlantic printed this story with all anonymous former officials and everything else. Listen, here's my position, and we're going to cover this with clips, and I got a lot more on this. If you can't put your name associated to something that's this serious, that may swing a U.S. election, because for me, if it's proven that Donald actually did this, he's going to lose my vote. Okay, he will lose my vote. But the fact of the matter is that these are anonymous sources, and everybody is quoting anonymous sources. Let me tell you something. If you're one of those anonymous sources that are out there, either put your name on what you're saying on an issue that's this important to our country, or shut the hell up. Roll the tape.
In this press briefing today, the president insisting a story alleging he has called Americans killed in battle losers and suckers is fake news. In his words, The Atlantic uses statements from unnamed sources in a very detailed story. Several people in the Trump circle, as you just heard there, are saying on the record the allegations are false, while other unnamed sources are adding more context and background, and we'll lay it all out for you tonight. Meantime, Joe Biden calls the reported comments from the president disgusting and said today, quote, if true, it proves he is not fit to be commander-in-chief. Let's begin tonight with Chief White House correspondent John Roberts live on the North Lawn. Good evening, John.
Brett, good evening to you. This story is about an incident that is almost 2 years old now, the president's trip to France back in 2018 to commemorate Veterans Day, and how the dark clouds that mark that trip continue to swirl above the president's head. President Trump was incensed today about a report in The Atlantic magazine that claimed in November 2018 the president said he was canceling a visit to the Aisne-Marne American Military Cemetery in France because the war dead interred there were losers and suckers.
No, there's nobody that considers the military, and especially people that have given their lives in the military. To me, they're heroes.
The official reason for calling off the visit was bad weather. It was raining, low clouds, and Marine One couldn't fly. In an email, the president's military aide writing, "Team, we are a bad weather call for today's lift. Chief of Staff General Kelly will replace POTUS for today's ceremony. Please advise if any questions." While the president could have taken a motorcade out to the cemetery, there were security concerns about being so far out in the country, and the president was said to not be eager to sit in the car for the 4-hour round trip. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton was in a meeting to discuss whether the president should make the trip.
John Bolton, no friend of mine, but he wrote a book, and he talks about this incident, and he doesn't mention it.
Bolton told Fox News this afternoon he never heard the president mention suckers or losers in relation to U.S. war dead.
I didn't hear either of those comments or anything even resembling them. I was there at the point in time that morning when it was decided that he would not go to An Marne Cemetery. He decided not to do it because of John Kelly's recommendation. It was entirely a weather-related decision, and I thought the proper thing to do.
Two other former aides who were in the meeting confirmed the same thing to Fox News.
Good afternoon, folks.
In Wilmington today, Joe Biden indicated he didn't know the veracity of the claims in the article, but ripped the president anyways.
If these statements are true, the president should humbly apologize to every Gold Star mother and father and every Blue Star family that he's denigrated and insulted. Who the heck does he think he is?
So you're getting a flavor for, what's going on out there in the political world. Here's where I come out on this. Anonymous sources on something this important that could actually swing an election is the worst idea reporting. And I know I've talked to probably 4 print people in Washington from the last show when this broke to today's show. And all of them telling me the same thing, that anonymous sources are important in most cases as it relates to writing a story, okay? And they're confirmed by the reporter, they're confirmed by the editor. In a case like this, though, this is a whole different animal. Now, on one hand, the Donald appears to me to be very supportive of our military. He's been very supportive of our military. And he's redone the military, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. On the other hand, he has made some comments that I think that he should not have made about even the Vietnam War, in talking about why would anyone go over there and give their lives for a meaningless war. Okay, there were a lot of people in the country that felt that way, but coming out of a president of the United States' mouth, it's a little bit harder, I think, to listen to. On the other side, too, you then get into the whole John McCain thing, all right? Donald Trump manhandled the John McCain scenario. He did say John McCain is not a war hero. He's a loser because he got caught. These are hard things to run from. Now, does that make this story true? No, it does not. But this is a really disturbing scenario for me and why I'm trying to handle this on this show. And I'm letting everyone make up their own personal minds about this. There's been a lot of things that have come Donald Trump's way from the Democrats that have been completely untrue, the Russia hoax and all the other stuff. So right there now you have what's called a jaundiced eye towards anything that comes out of the Democrats and comes this way. Again, the Atlantic magazine is a completely left-leaning magazine, and all these unnamed sources, okay? But on the other hand, the Donald has let his mouth overload his you-know-what, I won't say it, but he's let it overload sometimes, where he just goes on and he says things. And the John McCain thing, John McCain was a war hero. And he also served his country in Congress for a long, long time. John McCain's life needs to be celebrated. I know that Donald feels like he screwed him on the Obamacare vote. You know, the last vote where he goes in and he goes like this, and I'm not voting for it. He was the last vote. He was the deciding vote. I understand that Donald Trump is not happy with John McCain, but you don't go to that level. Now, we go back to a situation to where a source also is stating, again, completely anonymous, that Donald Trump has said on the subject of American veterans, what's in it for them? They don't make money. Now, is that something that he said 10 years ago? Is it something that he said recently? You know, whatever you say is going to come back to you. I mean, there's no question about that. That's just the way the world works in today's technology world. You know, things that I say on this show, you know, I'm going to have to stand behind, which is why I'm going to try to stay right here in the middle, because that's where we all need to be operating from, okay? But, you know, I do make statements on this show about things that are happening and my feelings on these things, and I try to back them up like I did in the last segment with complete facts. Everything that was stated by that reporter in the last segment is garbage. And I think I proved it based on the facts. Here, this is a really, really, really dangerous scenario because these anonymous sources, and you've now got Fox News. CNN, of course, is going to, you know, anything that's anti-Trump, they're going to do. Okay, that's just how they're built. It's what they're doing. Even Fox News, though, and Jennifer Griffin, who we're going to get to in just a minute, has talked to, quote, unnamed sources. In my humble opinion on this subject, with the stakes so high, we shouldn't get any more to these unnamed sources. If you don't have a source that's willing to come clean on this one and state for the record with his name attached, it shouldn't be written anymore, because this is dangerous in the middle of the last piece of an election cycle. Now, I want to play a CNN clip where the editor-in-chief of the Atlantic magazine is their guest. Roll the tape.
Jeffrey, your story, it hurts. It hurts to read these quotes aloud from the President of the United States disparaging veterans. Can you take us just into your reporting and why you felt confident publishing this?
Well, I felt confident publishing it because I have multiple sources with firsthand knowledge of the President's views and comments. That's the only reason to publish anything. And I felt it was important to publish because in my experience, in our collective experience, I don't think we've had a president who has contempt for American soldiers, wounded veterans, people who've been killed in action. And so it's incredibly novel. It's one of these things that's in the category of shocking yet not surprising. And I say not surprising because, to borrow your term, open secrets, or David Ignatius' term, open secret, in 2015, Donald Trump did something that nobody in public life had ever done before, mocked John McCain for getting captured. That in ordinary times, and according to the rules of ordinary politics, that should have ended a candidacy. It didn't, and we've been living in that reality. And so I've just been fascinated by his attitude toward the American military and toward people who serve generally, not just in the military, but people who provide selfless service to the country. It's not something that he seems to understand very well.
Have you gone back to these sources since Thursday? Are some of them considering speaking publicly?
I don't want to go into that too much. I would say that I'm in a conversation with a large number of people, as are other reporters, as you noted at the top of the show. And I think there is, horror is the right word, across the national security complex of people who have devoted their careers to protecting the United States. There is a sense of horror about the way he acts and behaves and talks. And so I would fully expect, let me just say it this way, I would fully expect more reporting to come out about this and more confirmation and new pieces of information in the coming days and weeks.
Yeah.
So Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of the Atlantic magazine, is a complete liberal ideologue. That must be stated on this show. Brian Stelter, this guy's off the page as well. He's a Trump hater at the highest levels. Okay? Now, when they talk about, well, more information is going to come out, and this is going to come out, and we're talking to these people, you owe it to the American people, 50 some odd days out from an election, you get the sources on the record. We need to know who these people are. Okay? If they have a story that they're going to tell the story. What are they afraid of? Are they afraid that Donald Trump's going to have them arrested for espionage? That he's going to have them jailed? That what are they worried about? If you have something to say on a subject that is this important, you got to get these people on the record. But let me tell you what he just has signaled. You're going to get more and more and more stories, and they're all going to be anonymous sources. And to me, that's not fair to our system. This is not sticking up for Donald Trump. Again, I've said this over and over and over and over on this show. There's a lot of good that Donald Trump has done with the economy and other things. But he constantly puts his foot into his mouth. Is this another case of it? You know, I can't tell you. But this is important. I need to know, as an American citizen, did my president actually say that? Okay? But the fact of the matter is, you know, if we don't have sources that are coming forward and then they prove up what they're saying by dates and times and this and that to collaborate this is all politics again. It's all politics. And the American people are getting sick and tired of this. I know I'm getting sick and tired of it. But now you're going to have more stories that come out. He just signaled it. They're going to come out. But they're going to be anonymous sources. And if they're anonymous sources, then how do we determine, as the American people, who's telling the truth? Again, I'm being repetitive here. On one hand, Donald Trump has been a great friend to the military in his almost 4 years, 3.5 years of being president of the United States. That's a fact. On the other side, the John McCain and some of his comments about Vietnam, I know he made derogatory comments about Vietnam. He's been making those for years. Okay? Does that translate in now when he's in France on why he doesn't go to the cemetery? What's clear is the helicopter was not safe for him to get on. Could he have gotten in a car? Probably. Did he decide not to do it? It sounds like John Kelly is the guy that said, Mr. President, it's not safe for you to get on the helicopter. Now, there's a lot of speculation out there that the source is John Kelly. The president even hit that in some of his remarks over the weekend. If it's John Kelly, shame on you, John. Step up, go to a microphone. If the man said this, you're the one that basically is being credited for him not getting on the helicopter to go to the cemetery because, quite frankly, you said it was unsafe. The pilot said the visibility was unsafe. So this is where this story is all over the place. But if this is another made-up story, Joe Biden and the Democrats should just resign, okay? And if Donald Trump actually said this, he should step down. I mean, this is the incredible swing of this. So now, Jennifer Griffin, who I happen to think is a very good reporter. I mean, she seems like she's just the facts, and she seems like she does her job. She's been doing it for a long time. She covers the Pentagon for Fox News. And I've always thought that she's a credible source. She verifies the story that The Atlantic has run, except for the part about the people that are in the cemetery that he did not go to are losers and suckers. She says she has not verified that. But in terms of other things that he said about our fallen comrades in the military, she is confirming through, again, anonymous sources that Trump basically said these things. And they ask her who her sources are. Well, I can't tell you, they're anonymous. Now, what does the Donald do? And I'm sure this upsets him. He then calls for her firing, and then what happens is Brit Hume, who, again, I'm a big fan of. I think he's a traditional, no-nonsense reporter that's been around for a long time, comes to Jennifer Griffin's defense and says, you know, these stories sometimes do have all these anonymous sources. And Jennifer Griffin is credible, and it never seen anything that would suggest that she's not credible. And I think that he got upset that Donald calls for a firing. It's immediately what Donald does when he gets backed up in a corner. He comes out, and now he wants everybody fired. That's not a good look. It's just not a good look. And Jennifer Griffin is now become part of the problem as I see it. And I like her. And the problem is, either get your sources to go on the record or don't write anymore. Just don't. Because it doesn't have any credibility anymore, because you got half the people saying one thing and you got half the people saying another. And you know the sad part about this? It's never going to be proven either way. It's not. And part of the issue with the Donald Trump philosophy on how he runs things, and the Donald Trump inability to be able to communicate effectively with his people, why he's had so much turnover, okay? And then anybody who leaves that administration, he has negative things to say about. You know, I don't think that's very smart. I think that if you're running a business, you're running the country, you know, you applaud people that leave. If they leave on terms because you've asked them to leave, then you just don't say anything. You just don't say anything. You just move on, okay? You know, there's no reason to kick sand in somebody's face. But again, you know, the Donald starts on John Kelly. Some were suggesting that John Kelly might be the anonymous source for the story that Jennifer Griffin wrote. Well, if he is, John Kelly, who's a decorated military man, I believe he was a Marine, you know, show some integrity. If this is what you're telling a reporter, stand in front of a microphone and explain yourself. The stakes are too high. They're too high. So this is a story that we're going to follow. It absolutely, though, really, I think, indicates where our country is, the division in our country. This is really dangerous stuff. This is really, really dangerous stuff. And I'm trying to figure out, you know, how this all ends. And the answer is, it's probably not going to end. It's going to be he said, she said, and then Donald's going to call for more people to be fired, and so on and so forth. There is no conclusion that any reasonable person can come to as it relates to this story. There just isn't. And as an American, I want to know what the facts are. Did my president say this? And if he did, shame on him, and it's a big problem. If he didn't, the Democrats should fold the tent up and go home. And all these reporters and everything else should just resign. But this is to the point that we've gotten to. And again, I mentioned, you know, we're still not even close to the end yet. This is just going to get worse and worse and worse. And it's just a shame. It's not good for our country. So we'll continue to follow the story. Okay, well, that's our show for this Labor Day. Again, you know, this is a Labor Day really like no other. It was a 4th of July like no other. And my hope and prayer is that Thanksgiving and Christmas are not like Thanksgiving and Christmases like no other. I hope that by that time we can have a much better handle on this pandemic. I hope that everybody stays safe. I hope that everybody follows the protocols that are out there to try to keep our country safe and to try to keep the spread under control. We'll be back with you on Thursday, and I'm looking forward to covering the news that will be coming out. I think that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are going to be pretty active news days on all fronts. And so we'll be looking forward to doing the show on Thursday. I appreciate it. I'm your host, Frank Zaccanelli. You can reach our show. You can watch our show, The 2B Frank Show, on YouTube, The 2B Frank Show on Twitter, The 2B Frank Show on LinkedIn, The 2B Frank Show on Facebook, and the 2bfrankshow.com. We're really excited that you're watching our show. Our show is growing. I mentioned the last show we were looking at doing outside of our podcast now, taking the audio portion and streaming that somewhere. So I'm in discussions on that to be able to expand the viewership of the show. So I'm excited to be your host. I appreciate everybody's time today. I want you to have a safe rest of your Labor Day weekend, and we'll see you on Thursday.